Hi guys, we're going to go over how to use the TI-83 or 84 calculators to give us a scatter plot and to help us go through and create the line of best fit or the least squares regression line or the linear regression. So before we get started on that, we need to turn our diagnostics on. So you're going to hit second, then 0 so that we go into the catalog. Scroll down to the diagnostic and the one that says turn it on, then we hit enter 2 times. Alright, so we're going to hit second and then catalog and scroll down until we get to the diagnostic on. Alright, so now we're down here to where the diagnostic is turned on. We hit enter and then enter again, and then it'll tell us when it's done and the diagnostic is turned on this calculator. Okay, now we're going to clear the lists, all of the lists that we have. So we're going to hit second and then the plus button so it takes us to the memory. And then option 4 is to clear all of the lists. So we hit second and then the plus, and that'll take us to this list. We want to choose option 4 so it clear all lists. So 4, and then it types it up here, and then we just need to hit enter and it'll tell us when all of our lists are cleared. Alright, so now that we've got our diagnostics turned on and all of our lists are cleared, now we're going to create new lists from the data on the second page of the worksheet. The one that talks about, it's on the top right side of the second page in the worksheet. Alright, so on our second page of the worksheet, is the top of it says using the calculator. Step 1, enter data into the calculator. We're going to press stat, then select edit and press enter. That's going to take us where we can enter in our lists. So we're going to come here to press stat. Okay. Then we're going to hit the edit. It's already on there, option 1. And that'll take us to where we have our list. Now all of our lists are already cleared. So we have list 1 and list 2. And for what we're doing, that's all we need is list 1 and list 2. Alright, so now we're going to enter in our list 1 the total fat in grams. So if you go over to the table that's on the right that talks about the hamburger, the different sandwiches, and how much fat and calories they have. So in list 1, we're going to put the total fat. So I'm going to start with 9, and then I hit enter, and then 13, type that in and hit enter, and go down my list and enter in all of those values. Alright, so I entered in my entire list, and you can tell by on that last one, it says L1 and in parentheses 11. That means it's the 11th entry in list 1. And we know from our paper that there should be 11 entries because there are 11 sandwiches. And my last one is 5. And I've double checked my numbers to make sure I've typed them all in there correctly. Okay, now we're going to enter in the total calories in list 2. So I'm going to use my arrow, my right arrow right here, to go over to my list 2 and do the same thing, starting with 260 and then working my way through list 2, the total calories. Okay, so now I've got my list 2. This is the total calories, and we can think of this as your X values. List 1 is your X values, list 2 is your Y values. This is your input, and list 2 is your output. So these are really ordered pair points. So we're going to plot them on a graph, and we're going to use the calculator to do that. We're going to call it, this is called a scatter plot. So once you have your lists for your X's and your Y's in here, we're going to create the graph or the scatter plot that shows all of these data points. Alright, so now if you go to the left side of that paper, we're on step 2, creating the scatter plot. So if we hit second and then the Y equals, that's going to take us to the stat plot, and we're going to turn that on. So second, and then Y equals, and now we want to turn on our first stat plot. So we hit enter, and yours might not have all of this on there. Some of the TI-84s are a little bit different. Some of them are going to automatically assume that list 1 is your X list and list 2 is your Y list. But if they don't, you want to just double check and make sure. And we're using this as the scatter plot. So I'm going to Just make sure that's turned on, and then I hit graph. So now what I'm seeing on here is a whole lot of nothing, because the calculator is so zoomed in, it needs to be zoomed out to actually show the data points. So that's what we're going to do next, is the zoom, and then that's going to take us to zoom stat. We'll zoom this out so that we can see all of those data points. And now I've got my scatter plot of all the data points. Okay, now if you had something else graph on there, hit Y equals and just check to make sure that all of those are clear. Because if something's in any of these, it's going to graph something else on top of your scatter plot. And in a minute, we're going to put the line of best fit in there, but for right now, we don't want to have anything other than our scatter plot. So you'll notice that plot 1 is highlighted because that's our scatter plot that we just did, and we want all the rest of these to be blank. All right, so now we're going to go through how to find your line of best fit, or the linear regression line, or the least squares regression line. All right, so to find our line of best fit, you're going to hit stat. Okay, so we're going to go to stat, and then you're going to use the right arrow to go to calculate. So I'm going to hit the right arrow and go over to calculate, and you'll see the fourth option down is the linear regression, and it's in the form ax plus b. Now, we've been talking about lines in y equals mx plus b. But in the calculator, they don't use m, they use a. So when it says in the form ax plus b, a represents the slope, and b represents your y-intercept. Okay, so we're going to come down here, select our linear regression of the form ax plus b, and hit enter. Now it's going to say, okay, list 1 is my x, list 2 is my y. Some of yours might not have the frequency list, but you're going to come down here and hit enter on calculate. Or maybe you might have to hit enter twice, but then it's going to give us the slope and the y-intercept. So for this specific set of data, the official line of best fit is y is equal to a slope of 11.73, and right now I'm only rounding to the hundredths, so 2 decimal places. So 11.73 x plus 193.85 for the y-intercept. And I'm just getting these from the A and the B here. Okay, so this is our equation for the line of best fit. This screen also shows us the correlation, or the R, the correlation coefficient. We're going to be talking about that later, but that's where you can get this information too. So the R represents the correlation coefficient. Okay, so now we're on step 4 to graph the line of best fit. So the instructions on your worksheet tell you how to copy it over, but that takes a lot more and you can make a lot of mistakes. So we're going to do it the other way. We've already written down our equation. We're just going to type this directly in. So you're going to hit y equals, so y equals, and then now we're going to type 11.73x plus 193.85 into this spot right here. So 11.73, and our x is right up here. So you see that first one is x, and then plus 193.85. If you hit enter, it's just going to take you down to where you can enter in another equation, but we just want this single line of best fit equation. So now we just need to hit graph. So up here on this top right, graph, and it's going to graph this line of best fit along with our scatter plot so that we can visually see how the line of best fit gets all of those points as close as possible. Now, the reason we care about the line of best fit is because it's going to help us to make predictions. So, for example, on this one, with our X being the total grams from fat and Y being the calories, if we put in our X into here, we can use this equation to predict how many total calories there will be. All right, so we're going to use this line of best fit to predict if we know that a hot dog has 18 grams of total fat. Okay, because that's our X, that's what X represents, our total fat. We substitute this in, it'll help us predict how many total calories there will be. So we're going to just substitute that right in here for where the X is, and then simplify. All right, so if I hit clear, that's just going to take me where I can type in things. So I'm going to do 11.73 times, and I'm putting it in parentheses, 18, and then I can do plus 193.85. So this is simplifying it for me. And when there are 18 grams of total fat, that's going to, our best guess or prediction, it's going to give us 404.99 total calories. There's another way that you can use the calculator to help you figure out and make predictions. So one of the ways is when you talk about an equation or a line, we can always represent it with a table. If I have my input, then I can figure out my output, right? So if I put in 18, we figured out it gives us 404.99 based off of our rounding for the slope and for the y-intercept from what the linear regression gave us. But you can find this information on a table on this calculator. So if you look right above where it says graph, there's table. So if you do second, then graph, so we're going to do second, and then hit the graph button, that's going to give us a table. Basically the same kind of table, just in a vertical format. And we can scroll down until we find 18 for our input or our X value, and then look over there and it says 404.99. So you can use the table from the calculator as well, but sometimes it's just as fast to substitute into your line of best fit. All right, so now let's talk about just kind of summarizing everything that we've figured out on this. So when we look at our scatter plot, now I didn't put all the points out here. I'm just talking about the X and the Y axis to talk about the X and Y variables. Our X axis was the total fat in grams, and the Y axis was the total calories. So the X variable represents the total fat in grams in the sandwich, and the Y variable represents the total calories in that same sandwich. And then from our calculator, we found that the slope of the linear regression was 11.73 and the y-intercept was 193.85. That led us to our equation for our line of best fit of being y equals 11.73 x plus 193.85. So now we need to interpret the slope and the y-intercept. What do those really mean? All right, so as we're interpreting the slope, we're just looking at the 11.73 because that is our slope. So the way this works is that for every 1 gram, that means if we come up here to our scatter plot, for every gram of total fat in a sandwich, the total number of calories increases by 11.73 calories. So we're saying for every gram of fat, the calories increase by 11.73 calories. So now with our y-intercept, to interpret that, we're looking at the y-intercept from our line of best fit, and this means that if a sandwich has no fat at all, so we're looking here on our y-axis, if the sandwich has no fat at all, then that means that the sandwich will have 193.85 calories. So if the sandwich has no fat at all, if the input is 0, then the output tells us that it's going to start out with 193.85 calories.